And if you don't mind, I'd like to go out of order a little bit. We have the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Moore, here to introduce his witness. You could use your witness. You don't get that on this committee, but we would like you to introduce your witness.
Well, thank you and good morning. It's an honor to introduce a constituent of mine, Brad Mueller, who's going to be testifying before the committee. And I'll read briefly about his bio, and then I'll just talk like we do from North Carolina about him. Brad is the marketing communication strategist with more than 35 years of experience, and he works presently for Charlotte Pipe and Foundry. If you like pipes, if you've ever drank water, then you probably drank out of one of their pipes. They're the leading producer of pipes in the United States. They're a fifth-generation company based in Charlotte. They were founded, I believe, in 1901. Right. You weren't there then, though. No, I don't think so. Not quite. But Brad's got a very distinguished background. He actually was in Washington for 10 years, where he worked for USAID and the Bush administration, he was the desk officer and managing foreign aid programs for Afghanistan and later for Central and Eastern Europe after the 1989 fall of the Berlin Wall. He then later went to work for the late Michael Deaver, who was the former Deputy Chief of Staff to President Reagan on a variety of public affairs, international relations, and trade issues. And he is extremely active in the community. He is known internationally really as an expert on trade issues, and I can tell you, I consider it a real honor to have Brad in our back home to be one of my constituents. And this company has such an amazing reputation. But if you want to know, if you want to find out information about how trade is affecting businesses right here, how unfair trade is hurting businesses and causing job loss, you have an amazing expert to testify today. So I'm proud to have a fellow Tar Heel from the great state of North Carolina here with you today, and appreciate the committee hearing from him. So treat him nice if you don't mind. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I promise to treat him nice. As a matter of fact, I consulted with J.M. Eagle of California, and they believe that you are a superb witness since you're the two competing top two. And with that, I'd like to introduce Ms. Della Briere, hopefully I got that close to right, who is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy, a think tank focusing on national security, foreign policy. Her work at FDD focuses on China policy. Ms. Della Briere also is the co-founder of Horizon Advocacy, a consulting firm focused on the implications of China's approach to geopolitics. Welcome. Mr. Julian Koo is the faculty director of the international program at the Maurice A. Dean Distinguished Professor of Constitutional Law at the university's Maurice D. Dean School of Law. Professor Koo research is focused on the relationship of international law, the U.S. Constitution, and China's relationship with international law. I think Mr. Bradford Mueller has been well introduced, and we're thrilled to have you here today. And lastly, we go to Mr. DeLille, thank you, DeLille, who is the Stephen A. Kozin Professor of Law at the University of Pennsylvania. Professor DeLille is also holds appointments as a professor of political science and director of the Center for the Study of Contemporary China at Penn. His research focuses on China's engagement in international order, law, and legal institutions, and their relationship to the politics and policies of China and the U.S.-China relationship. We welcome all of our distinguished witnesses, and pursuant to committee rules, I would ask that you rise to take the oath. Customarily raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that under penalty of perjury, that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief. So help you God. Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect that all witnesses answered in the affirmative. For all the witnesses, please be aware that although we ask that you stay within 5 minutes, your entire opening statement, along with additional material that you either have today or that you can supplement, will be made in order and
inviting me to testify today. Charlotte Pipe and Foundry is the nation's leading maker of cast iron and plastic pipe and fittings for plumbing. We're a fifth-generation family-owned business. We've been in continuous operation in the United States for 124 years. We employ 1,800 associates, and through our wholly owned subsidiary, Neenah Foundry, we have another 1,000 employees spread across 11 plants across the United States. In 2017, we filed AD/CVD petitions through our trade association against imports of cast iron pipe and fittings. The Department of Commerce determined that Chinese exporters had undersold and subsidized cast iron pipe in the United States up to 345% less than fair value. For cast iron fittings, Commerce determined the Chinese had undersold those products up to 494%. Duties to counteract these unfair trade practices have been in place since August of 2018. Over the last 7 years, unscrupulous foreign entities have turned to transshipping pipe and fittings through third countries and deploying other forms of evasion and customs fraud to obscure the true origin of their products to avoid paying these duties. The Enforce and Protect Act, or EPA, grants U.S. Customs and Border Protection tools to combat customs fraud. In the 7 years since our orders were issued, we have received 10 positive EPA determinations of transshipping against producers of our products, primarily in Malaysia and Cambodia. When Customs investigated the locations of these alleged producers, they found an empty warehouse, a bus stop, even a massage parlor, but no foundries. Despite Customs' good faith efforts, they have been unable to stop the illegal flow of imports. These entities have no intention of ever paying the duties. When caught transshipping, these companies simply dissolve, and the bad actors reconstitute under a new shell company and resume their unlawful activity. Chinese shippers have been so successfully evading U.S. trade enforcement that they freely advertise their capabilities to, quote, avoid high duties by exporting goods from China to Southeast Asian countries where we change containers and then re-export to the destination country. Multiple news outlets are reporting on the many ways Chinese companies exploit gaps in domestic enforcement to bypass tariffs, duties, and other trade restrictions. I was quoted in the front page story of the New York Times on May 27, lamenting the whack-a-mole nature of the process of tracking down these fraudulent shell companies and shutting them down, only to see them right back in business under a new name. CNBC uncovered a, quote, web of illicit activity that's propping up these shipments from China. Reuters wrote about, quote, Chinese exporters offering sweet deals to U.S. businesses that come wrapped in fraud. The Financial Times reported on how, quote, Chinese exporters are stepping up efforts to avoid tariffs by shipping goods via third countries to conceal their true origin. Evasion and transshipment have been so successful that Customs' effort to collect duties has become futile. Based on our calculations, Chinese producers of our products have successfully evaded more than $44 million of dumping duties, money that they have robbed of the U.S. Treasury. And we have spent $7 million of our own money filing trade cases and EPA petitions in an unsuccessful attempt to enforce U.S. trade law. Customs simply does not have the tools to overcome this determined fraud, and current penalties for such behavior are woefully inadequate. To address this, Representative Boss and Representative Sewell have referred to the House Ways and Means Committee the Fighting Trade Cheats Act to strengthen enforcement against trade fraud. This bill attacks evasion of AD/CVD orders by increasing penalties, denying a person and their affiliates engaged in fraud an importer of record number, and allowing private enforcement action to gain immediate injunctive relief against illegal trade flows. To put it bluntly, the AD-CVD process is broken. Without far stronger remedies, industries will be reluctant to undertake these cases. The cost to file and win these cases are exceedingly high, and the promise of relief has become non-existent in the face of lax trade enforcement. I'd like to thank Chairman Issa and Ranking Member Johnson and the committee again for investigating these threats to American economic security and for allowing me to testify today.
Thank you. Professor DeLeal.
Thank you. Chairman Issa, Ranking.
Placed in the record. Without objection, Mr. Knott will be permitted to participate in today's hearing for the purpose of questioning the witnesses if a member yields him time for that purpose. And we welcome the gentleman.
Thank you.
I now recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan. Pursuant to the rules, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my privilege to be here. I'm familiar with one of the witnesses in the company that he comes from, Charlotte Pipe and Foundry. I've had the privilege of touring their facilities. I know them well. And this is a company that does it the right way. They put their heads down. They do great work. They deliver world-class products that will compete against anybody. But what any company cannot compete against is fraud, manipulation, unfair markets, lack of free markets. And Mr. Mueller, thank you for coming to come and testify today. And I want to be quick and to the point. What legislative proposals are you familiar with that could protect industries like yours that benefit not only just North Carolina, but the entire country and then the world by extension?
Thank you, Congressman. In addition to the Fighting Trade Cheats Act, which I mentioned, which would impose stiffer penalties on these bad actors, take import licenses away, and allow us a private right of action to enforce U.S. trade law. There is also the Protecting American Industry and Labor from International Trade Crimes Act, and I urge the Congress to pass and fund that, which would stand up a trade fraud crime unit at the Department of Justice. The bill calls for $20 million in funding. As I mentioned in my testimony, on our two products alone, we believe more than $40 million has been uncollected in duties by customs. So if they just had been able to collect on our products, we could double the funding of this trade crime unit to $40 million. We believe that in order to stop this behavior, we have to start prosecuting some of these bad actors because they continue to set up these shell companies. When confronted, they dissolve them, and they're right back in business with a new shell company.
And in your experience, sir, how do these foreign entities gain entry into the United States? Do they have participants in the United States? Are they blind actors? Are they willing and knowing? What's your experience?
There are U.S.-based importers that engage in this fraud, and we know some of those. Glendale Fire in California is one. Wells in Chicago, Wells Plumbing is another. These are U.S.-based importers that are engaged in this illicit activity. And those are the companies that we should be targeting with something like the PALE Act.
And in regards, with your experience, sir, given the amount of fraud and sort of the suppressed pricing that the Chinese Communist Party engages in, how responsive have the United States authorities been fielding your complaints in this area?
Well, we tip our hat to Customs. In fact, we met with them last week, our trade association, and we have engaged very cooperatively with Customs, and they do their best to enforce the law. We try to educate them on our products, how to spot the fraudulent products coming in. And so we are very pleased with Customs. They just don't have enough tools to stop this behavior.
Right. Professor Koo, let me transition to you quickly. What are ways that we can disincentivize the Chinese Communist Party on a macro level from continuing to engage in this? Because it's not just Charlotte Pipe and Foundry, obviously. It's everything from biopharma to engines to computing. The theft and obstruction is real and across every sector. How do we dissuade them from continuing this?
Thanks. You know, there is no easy answers here. I wish there was a silver bullet. I think passing the legislation could certainly help. I do think that making clear that the first and foremost that we take these things seriously, and that we force bad actors disclose the network of funding. The problems in transshipment is some of the bigger problems we see is the way the Chinese party state is intertwined with each other. We have to assume, unfortunately, that a lot of what look like normal private companies we want to welcome here to the United States have to unfortunately play by different rules because we can't trust them because they're intertwined with the party state at home. And I think it's just unfortunate that's the way we have to be tougher. We have to demand greater disclosure of connections between Chinese companies and the party sort of or partnership groups that they're involved with.
Is there a way to separate doing business with Chinese companies from the Chinese Communist Party?
I mean, I think there is. I mean, I think we should do business with whoever, but I think we have to assume that those companies, which are private much of the time, can be co-opted very quickly in a way that we can't in the United States.
Right.
Force a private company to do something that the government wants it to do. Where so you have to proceed cautiously. It's really it's not the United States government's fault. It's China's government's fault for creating this weird web of influence and control that makes, unfortunately, even honest Chinese companies suspect.
Yep. To the witnesses, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I would note for everyone in attendance the reference to H.R. 1284, which is a bipartisan bill for the private right of action, just to make sure everyone can look that up. I thank you, Mr. Mueller, for mentioning it. With that,
and our businesses. I also want to thank Mr. Mueller for your testimony, your ideas about what Congress can do better, but also for your service to this country, and in particular, at the beginning of your service working for USAID. We know how important foreign relations are. So you told us that Charlotte Pipe has filed multiple claims against Chinese litigants at the International Trade Commission, and that Chinese companies clearly have been dumping products at anti-competitive low prices. I participated with our North Carolina Secretary of State at a North Carolina Chamber event, and it can actually just devastate a small company that doesn't have the resources that you do. How much time and money has your company invested in filing these multiple anti-dumping suits at the ITC?
Well, I mentioned previously in my testimony, it's almost $7 million of our own money. And another way to answer your question, I was hired by Charlotte Pipe and Foundry 23 years ago to run the marketing department, to be the vice president of marketing, which I did for a number of years. But in 2006, I took on a government affairs role and kind of wore two hats at Charlotte Pipe. In the last 5 years, I've been working exclusively on government affairs. So my time and salary has been dedicated to trying to work through these issues, both at the state level and at the federal level. And it continues to occupy. I joke that I shed half my job and I'm twice as busy. So.
And small businesses simply couldn't afford to have that kind of advocacy.
No, and in fact, you know, I also have represented the American Foundry Society. They have 1,000 corporate members, foundries throughout the United States, steel, aluminum, and cast iron. 80% of those foundries are small businesses, 100 people or less. They don't have the resources to fight like we do, and many of them are going out of business. 20 years ago, there were 2,000 foundries in America, and we're down to about 1,700. And these are vital for national security. You can't make tanks or planes or ships without foundries, steel, cast iron, aluminum foundries.
Well, thank you for also those small businesses. Charlotte Pipe discovered that a Chinese manufacturer had stolen your name, trademark, and logo, and was using it to sell unaffiliated products in East Asia. Since then, you filed trademark infringement claims in both China and Singapore. Can you tell us the status of those claims?
Yes, thank you for that question. I did testify on the Senate side before Senator Tillis in his intellectual property subcommittee on this topic. We only discovered by accident that China had stolen our brand identity and was going to market in Southeast Asia as Charlotte Pipe and Foundry. There's a building in Shanghai with our logo on the side. And a gentleman was passing out Charlotte Pipe business cards at a trade show in Singapore. That's how we discovered the theft. We have We filed to get our IP back in Singapore. We lost, but then won on appeal. We also had to hire a Chinese law firm at great expense to fight for our IP to get it back in China. And that is stalled in the courts of Beijing. No decision has been made, but the case has basically gone cold. We can't get any information from the Chinese government, from our Chinese law firm, as to the status of that case. And so we know they're still going to market on Chinese websites. You can still see that they're going to market as Charlotte Pipe.
Yeah, and just to, not to be too repetitive, but when I went to this North Carolina Chamber event, they brought in 2 small businesses that have experienced similar kinds of appropriation of their intellectual property. And those small businesses simply do not have anybody who can stand up for them. So they either have to move on or they have to, find some other way. And so I want to thank you for suggesting some very concrete bipartisan steps we can take to help right these wrongs. Thank you for your testimony. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. We now go to the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for this important discussion, which I think really covers 2 main areas, one being the CCP's evasion of policy